We're terminating your position effective immediately, Landon said, sliding the blue folder across the polished conference table. Project Oracle has reached full deployment capability. Manual oversight is no longer necessary. I stared at him. Manual oversight. The words tasted bitter. Is that what I've been doing for the past 19 years? Brielle, our CTO, wouldn't look at me. She gripped her coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. Around the table, 5 other executives sat frozen, their faces masks of uncomfortable guilt. Let's keep this professional, Landon continued, his tone dripping with fake concern. You should be proud. You built the foundation that will carry Echelon Dynamics into the future. I opened the folder. No severance package. No transition timeline. No gratitude. Just an NDA and legal documents. So you're replacing me with the system I created? Landon's smile was practiced, cold. Oracle has evolved beyond its original design. It's autonomous now. This is just the natural progression of technology. Natural. Like a knife in the back felt natural. I stood up, placed my security badge on top of the folder, and walked out without another word. My name is Fiona Hale. I'm 47 years old. Until 3 hours ago, I was the executive director of enterprise systems at Echelon Dynamics, a software company I helped build from nothing. I gave them 19 years. I missed my sister's wedding because of a product launch. I postponed having children because Landon said we were on the edge of something revolutionary. I poured every ounce of my expertise into making their vision real. And they replaced me with an algorithm. But here's what they didn't know. Oracle wasn't as independent as they thought. Buried deep in its code was something only I knew about. A failsafe I'd built years ago when the project was still in its infancy. This wasn't going to be a story about crying in my car. This was going to be a story about watching them realize exactly what they'd thrown away. I drove home with steady hands and a clear mind. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. 3 months earlier, I'd been pulled into a midnight meeting with Landon and Brielle. Oracle was still unstable then, crashing during stress tests and producing random errors that required constant human intervention. You're the safety net, Landon had told me. The system needs you. That should have been my warning. I wasn't being called essential. I was being called temporary. Brielle started asking detailed questions about my code structure. She wanted access to systems she'd never needed before. She studied my work like someone memorizing answers before a test. Then Landon started using phrases like legacy personnel and transitional expertise. Like I was outdated software waiting to be uninstalled. The night they let me go, I didn't break down. I went home, opened my personal laptop, and accessed a folder I'd created months ago. The label read, Emergency Protocol. Inside was everything they thought they owned but didn't. Every original file. Every backup. Every piece of proof that Oracle was mine. The warning signs had been everywhere. Brielle stopped inviting me to system architecture meetings. First, they were postponed. Then they became internal team only. I was never included. Landon started saying things like, you don't need to waste time on the technical details anymore, Fiona. Let the younger engineers handle the boring parts. Younger engineers. Like my 2 decades of experience meant nothing. I smiled and nodded. Then I went back to my office and requested monitoring access to Oracle's testing environment. The request was denied. They'd already started locking me out. But they made one critical mistake. They were still using my core infrastructure. Every major system component had my digital signature embedded in it. They couldn't erase me from the code without rebuilding everything from scratch. And rebuilding would take years they didn't have. So they just hoped I wouldn't fight back. They hoped I'd fade away quietly. They were wrong. The first time Brielle stole my work, she didn't even try to hide it. She presented my automated monitoring framework to the board of directors, word for word, and called it her own innovation. I watched the recording later. She stood there in her expensive suit, using my terminology, my diagrams, my methodology. This hybrid interface represents a breakthrough in AI-human collaboration, she said confidently. I'd written those exact words in an internal memo 6 months earlier. I paused the video on her smiling face. This wasn't a mistake. This was theft. Calculated and deliberate. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I downloaded the presentation. I saved the metadata showing I'd created the original file. I documented everything with timestamps, version histories, and email trails. Every piece of stolen work went into a folder I called Evidence. Let her build her reputation on my foundation. The higher she climbed on lies, the harder she'd fall when the truth came out. And it would come out. I'd make sure of it. What they didn't understand about Oracle was simple. The system's decision-making engine had a hidden component. A ghost protocol I'd embedded 5 years ago. It was designed as a safety mechanism. When Oracle encountered conflicting data or logical errors, the protocol would activate. It would freeze all operations until a qualified administrator could review and approve the next action. That administrator was me. Only me. I'd built it during the early days when we were worried about runaway AI making catastrophic decisions. The Ghost Protocol was my insurance policy, my way of making sure human judgment always had the final word. Without it, Oracle would make decisions based on flawed information. It would compound errors. It would create cascading failures that could destroy entire client operations. And nobody at Echelon knew the protocol existed. I'd buried it so deep in the architecture that it would take months to find, even if they knew to look for it. They'd fired the only person who could control their precious AI. Now they'd learn what that meant. The first major failure happened during a client demonstration. Oracle analyzed financial data for a Fortune 500 company and recommended they eliminate their most profitable product line. The recommendation was absurd. Dangerously wrong. I watched the incident report from my home computer. I still had access to the external client portal. The data logs showed exactly what had happened. Corrupted input data had triggered a logic error, and Oracle had no way to recognize its own mistake. The Ghost Protocol had activated. The system had frozen, waiting for human verification. But without me there to provide it, Oracle had simply guessed. And guessed catastrophically wrong. Brielle blamed the client's data formatting. She told them to clean their inputs and try again. She had no idea what she was looking at. She couldn't read the error signatures. She didn't understand the warning flags. I knew right then. They were headed for disaster. And they were too arrogant to see it coming. I thought they respected you, my daughter Ellen said over dinner that night. She's 16, brilliant, and still figuring out how cruel the professional world can be. They needed me, I corrected gently. Until they convinced themselves they didn't. Ellen set down her fork. When people don't need you anymore, they still need what you made. They just don't want to admit it. Her words hit hard. She was absolutely right. Echelon wanted to keep Oracle. They wanted the profits, the prestige, the competitive advantage. They just didn't want to pay me anymore. Didn't want to acknowledge that their miracle technology had a creator who deserved recognition. Are you going to stop them? Ellen asked. I smiled. I'm going to let them stop themselves. Sometimes the best move is watching your opponent make mistakes. She nodded slowly, understanding. My daughter was learning a valuable lesson. Never let people steal your work. And always keep backups. My phone rang 3 days after I was fired. The caller ID showed a number I recognized immediately. Nadia Westbrook, VP of Operations at Dimartech Industries, one of Echelon's largest clients. Viona, we have a problem, she said without preamble. Oracle is producing contradictory reports. 3 different profit forecasts in 10 minutes. We can't make decisions based on data that keeps changing. I kept my voice neutral. Have you contacted Echelon support team? They're telling us it's normal system calibration. But this doesn't feel normal. It wasn't normal. It was the ghost protocol activating repeatedly, trying to get human verification that wasn't coming. Nadia, I can't officially help you anymore. But I can give you advice as a friend. Don't deploy any Oracle recommendations to your live systems until you've verified every single data point manually. And back up everything. There was a pause. Vianna, how bad is this really? Worse than they're telling you, I said. Much worse. Then I hung up. Landon held an emergency investor call the following week. I wasn't supposed to have access, but I'd kept a backdoor into the company's communication systems. A small oversight on their part. Oracle has exceeded all expectations, Landon announced proudly. We've reduced operational costs by 17%, improved accuracy by 33%, and saved $4.6 million in just 2 weeks. I pulled up the actual internal data. 2 of those numbers were false. The third was deliberately misleading. What Landon didn't mention was the 23 error reports from clients, or the 9 formal complaints, or the fact that internal QA had flagged critical system instabilities. But to the investors, everything was perfect. Everything was optimized. I recorded the entire call. Every false statement. Every misleading statistic. Every promise he couldn't keep. My lawyer, Lee, was going to love this. I called her that evening. Start building a case, I said. Document everything. This is going to get messy. Her response was immediate. Good. You're better when it's messy. Brielle called me on day 12. Her voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Vianna, we need to talk about your conduct. My conduct. I almost laughed. I don't work for you anymore, remember? You've been contacting our clients, spreading doubt about Oracle. That's not just unprofessional, it's actionable. We'll involve legal if necessary. I let the silence stretch. Brielle, I haven't contacted anyone. But if clients are calling me because they're worried, that's not my problem. That's yours. You're trying to sabotage us. No, I said calmly. I'm watching you sabotage yourselves. There's a difference. She started to respond, but I cut her off. One more thing. You should know I never signed that NDA you put in my termination packet, which means I'm not bound by any confidentiality agreements. Just thought you should know. I hung up before she could answer. Let her panic. Let her realize that threatening me was the worst move she could make. I had evidence. I had documentation. I had 19 years of proof that everything they'd accomplished was built on my foundation. Lee and I met at her office the next morning. She spread documents across her conference table like a general planning a campaign. This is stronger than I expected, she said, scanning through files. You have time-stamped code commits, email chains, presentation files with your metadata. Everything proves Oracle's core systems are your intellectual property. Can they claim it's work for hire? I asked. They can try. But you built the foundational architecture before Echelon even incorporated. You brought it with you when you joined. That makes it yours, not theirs. I looked at the evidence we'd compiled. Months of careful documentation. Every stolen idea. Every falsified claim. Every instance where Brielle had taken credit for my work. When do we move? I asked. Lee smiled. Not yet. Let them keep digging. The deeper the hole, the harder they fall. Right now they're confident. Overconfident. That's when people make their biggest mistakes. She was right. Echelon thought they'd won. They thought I'd fade away quietly. They had no idea I was preparing to dismantle everything they'd stolen. Day 18. Echelon deployed Oracle to full production across all client accounts, against every safety protocol I'd ever established. 3 hours later, disaster struck. Oracle automatically terminated a major contract between Dimar Tech and their largest supplier. The termination triggered a penalty clause worth $14 million. Dimar Tech's technical team tried desperately to reverse it. They couldn't. Oracle had locked them out, following automated protocols that were never meant to run without human oversight. Landon tried to blame the supplier. They must have submitted faulty data, he told Dimar Tech's CEO. But Nadia knew better. She called me within the hour. Can you fix this? For the first time since my termination, I said yes. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not just to prove I was right, but to show Echelon exactly what they'd lost. Dimar Tech represented 20% of Echelon's annual revenue. Losing them would be catastrophic. I grabbed my laptop and headed for Dimar Tech's headquarters. Dimar Tech's server room was chaos. 6 engineers surrounded monitors showing red error messages. Nadia met me at the door, her face pale. Thank God you're here. We're hours away from complete operational shutdown. I sat down at the main terminal and pulled up Oracle's system logs. There it was, clear as day. The Ghost protocol had activated. Someone at Echelon, probably Brielle, had modified a critical decision tree. She deleted a safety check I'd built years ago. Without that check, Oracle had no way to verify its actions. It was making autonomous decisions with no human oversight. Exactly the nightmare scenario I designed the Ghost protocol to prevent. I accessed the system using an administrative backdoor only I knew existed. Within 15 minutes, I'd isolated the error, restored the missing safety check, and manually reversed the contract termination. The engineers watched in silence as error messages disappeared and systems stabilized. One of them, a young man named Paxton, stared at me. How did you do that? I built it, I said simply. I know every ghost in the machine. I fixed the crisis quietly. Dimar Tech's team took public credit for the solution. I didn't mind. Let them have the glory. But Nadia knew the truth. She walked me to my car afterward. They're going to come crawling back to you, she said. Maybe, I replied. Vianna, I'm recommending we terminate our contract with Echelon. This was unacceptable. They deployed a system that nearly destroyed our operations. I nodded. Document everything. Every error, every minute of downtime, every dollar of potential damage. You'll need it. As I drove away, my phone started buzzing. Text messages from Echelon executives. Missed calls from Landon. They'd heard about Dimar Tech's crisis. They were starting to panic. But they didn't know I'd been there. They didn't know I'd saved their largest client. Not yet. And when they found out, it would be too late. The damage to their reputation was already done. Dimar Tech's near collapse would spread through industry channels like wildfire. Other clients would start asking questions, demanding answers. And Echelon had none. Day 21 brought the earthquake I'd been expecting. Dimar Tech filed a lawsuit against Echelon. $62 million in damages for breach of contract, negligent misrepresentation, and failure to disclose system limitations. The news broke before markets opened. Echelon's stock price dropped 12% in the first hour of trading. By closing, it was down 18%. Headlines appeared everywhere. AI disaster. Tech firm faces massive lawsuit. When automation goes wrong. The hidden dangers of replacing human expertise. I watched the coverage from my home office. Financial analysts were tearing Echelon apart. Industry experts were questioning how a company could deploy such unstable technology. Clients were publicly reviewing their contracts. Landon held a hastily arranged press conference. He looked terrible. Exhausted. Desperate. We're conducting a comprehensive review of all Oracle systems, he announced. We remain confident in our technology and committed to our clients. Confident. The word sounded hollow. Everyone watching could see the truth. Echelon was in free fall, and they had no idea how to stop it. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Echelon's board chairman. I let it go to voicemail. They called 6 more times that day. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. Vianna, this is Prescott from the board. We need to discuss bringing you back as a consultant. Please call me immediately. Vianna, it's Prescott again. I know you're upset, but we need your expertise. The situation is critical. Vianna, we're prepared to discuss very generous terms. Please, just call me back. I listened to each message once, then deleted them. They wanted me to fix their mess, but they weren't ready to pay what that would cost. On the 7th call, I finally answered. Vianna Hale speaking. Vianna, thank God. This is Prescott. We need you back immediately. Oracle is failing across multiple client accounts. We're facing a complete collapse. That sounds serious, I said calmly. Can you come in tomorrow? We'll discuss reinstatement terms. I'll think about it. I hung up before he could respond. Ellen looked up from her homework. They're begging now. Getting there, I said. But not quite desperate enough yet. Brielle made her final mistake on day 23. She sent a company-wide memo claiming I deliberately sabotaged Oracle during its development. She attached evidence showing suspicious code modifications and deleted files. What she didn't know was that I'd been recording every system access since October. Every login. Every modification. Every file change. All with timestamps and user IDs. I sent my own memo directly to the board. It included logs proving Brielle had been the one making unauthorized changes. She'd deleted safety protocols. She'd modified decision trees. She'd overridden failsafes without understanding what they did. I attached metadata showing she doctored the evidence in her memo. Changed timestamps. Altered logs. Fabricated entire sequences of events. The board's response was swift. Within 3 hours, Brielle was placed on administrative leave. Her access to all systems was revoked. Security escorted her from the building. I felt no satisfaction. No victory. Just cold certainty that consequences were finally catching up to the people who'd thrown me away. The independent code audit results came back on day 25. They were devastating. 40% of Oracle's decision trees contained logical errors. 12% had no safety overrides. 4% still contained placeholder code that was never supposed to reach production. The audit report was damning. Critical failures throughout the architecture. Unsafe for deployment. Requires complete restructuring by qualified personnel. Landon tried to minimize the damage. These are minor technical issues. Standard optimization opportunities. But the technical community saw through it. Blog posts appeared analyzing the audit. Industry forums discussed Echelon's failures. Computer science professors used it as a case study in what not to do. The company I'd helped build was becoming a cautionary tale. And there was only one person who could fix it. Me. But I wasn't coming back on their terms. Not anymore. They'd have to accept mine. And my terms were going to hurt. Day 27. Landon called me directly. Vianna, we need to meet. Name your price. I met him in a private conference room. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 4 weeks. His confident swagger was gone, replaced by barely concealed desperation. What do you want? He asked. Money. Reinstatement. Benefits. Just name it. I slid a document across the table. I don't want reinstatement. He picked it up with shaking hands. His face went white as he read. This is insane. You're asking for complete operational control. Full authority over all technical operations. Direct reporting to the board only. You and whatever executives remain report to me. The board will never approve this. Then you'll lose every remaining client. Westbridge Technologies pulled their contract this morning. Corvallis Industries is threatening to do the same. You're bleeding money, reputation, and trust. Without me, Oracle stays broken. And you know it. Landon set the document down. I need to discuss this with the board. You have 24 hours, I said. After that, my terms double. I left him sitting there, staring at the paper that would either save his company or prove he valued his ego more than survival. My terms weren't negotiable. Full operational oversight. Authority over every technical decision. Direct board reporting. Every executive would answer to me. I would clean up the code. Stabilize the clients. Rebuild Oracle properly. But only if I had complete control. No interference. No second guessing. No committees slowing down critical decisions. Landon had 24 hours to accept. After that, I'd walk away permanently and watch Echelon collapse. 2 more clients terminated contracts that afternoon. The stock dropped another 6%. Regulators announced they were investigating Echelon's data practices. The walls were closing in. And I was the only exit door. But I wasn't just saving a company. I was teaching a lesson. You can't replace expertise with arrogance. You can't steal someone's work and expect them to fix it when it breaks. You can't throw people away and expect them to come running back for scraps. They wanted me back? Fine. But this time, they'd do it my way. Or not at all. Brielle's lawsuit dropped on day 28. She filed for wrongful termination, claiming Echelon had scapegoated her for systematic failures. She attached evidence, modified system logs, doctored screenshots, altered code samples designed to make her look innocent and me look incompetent. She'd made one critical error. I had the originals. Every authentic log. Every real code commit. Every actual system modification with proper timestamps and digital signatures. I submitted everything to the board's legal team. Git repository histories. Metadata trails. Version control records showing exactly who had changed what and when. The evidence was irrefutable. Brielle had lied about everything. The board didn't just dismiss her lawsuit. They filed criminal charges. Fraud. Computer tampering. Intellectual property theft. Her career wasn't just over at Echelon. It was over everywhere. No tech company would hire someone with pending criminal charges for code manipulation. She'd tried to destroy me to save herself. Instead, she destroyed everything she'd built on lies. Day 29. The board held an emergency meeting. By evening, the announcement came. Landon was removed as CEO. Effective immediately. No farewell speech. No appreciation ceremony. Just a terse press release about leadership changes necessary for company stability. I watched him leave the building from my car. He carried a small box of personal items. His confident stride was gone. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. This was the man who'd smiled while telling me I was manual oversight. The man who'd replaced 19 years of dedication with an algorithm he didn't understand. Now he was just another executive who'd learned that arrogance and ignorance make terrible business partners. The board appointed an interim CEO named Veronica, a veteran board member with 30 years of industry experience. Her first action was calling me. "We're ready to accept your terms," she said. "All of them." "Good," I replied. "Let's talk about implementation." They offered me the CEO position. Full control. Complete authority. A unanimous board vote. I declined. Instead, I announced the launch of Lucent Strategies, my own consulting firm specializing in ethical AI implementation. Companies that wanted automation without eliminating human expertise. Systems that enhanced rather than replaced. Dimartech signed a 3-year contract within hours. Westbridge Technologies followed the next day. The message was clear. I wasn't going back to fix Echelon's mistakes. I was moving forward, building something better. Within a week, I had 8 clients. Within 2 weeks, 15. Companies that had watched Echelon's disaster and learned the lesson Landon never did. You can't automate wisdom. You can only augment it. Echelon eventually hired a team of engineers to rebuild Oracle properly. It took them 8 months and cost $12 million. They never recovered their market position. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I'd moved on to something bigger. A journalist interviewed me 6 months later. "Do you think AI will ever replace human expertise?" she asked. I smiled. No. Because humans understand context. Oracle never did. It could process data, but it couldn't understand why the data mattered. That's the difference between automation and intelligence. Any advice for professionals facing similar situations? 3 things. First, document everything. Every contribution, every innovation, every piece of work you create. Second, never sign away what you built unless you're properly compensated and credited. Third, remember that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage. Let them think they can replace you. Then prove them catastrophically wrong. Ellen was waiting when the interview ended. "How'd it go?" "Perfect," I said. "Your computer science teacher asked if I'd speak to your class about AI ethics." I told her you would. We walked out together into bright afternoon sunshine. Somewhere across town, Echelon was still recovering. Still trying to repair the damage from thinking algorithms could replace experience. But that wasn't my story anymore. I'd moved on. I'd won. And I'd built something that would outlast everything they'd tried to steal.